And good evening. Hello, I'm David Mullins. I'm the General Manager of WFSU Public Media. And I'd like to welcome you to the 12th Annual Tallahassee Town Hall. Tonight's program is brought to you in collaboration between WFSU, the Village Square, Leadership Tallahassee, the Tallahassee Democrat, the City of Tallahassee, and Leon County Government. I'd like to welcome our video audience and our audience here in the studio. We've got multiple ways for the community to engage us in this conversation. The program is currently being streamed live. I hope if you're watching me now, you're streaming us live on wfsu.org/live. And as well, it's on Facebook Live at WFSU Media. You can also follow and participate in a live discussion on X using the hashtag TDVSQ. WFSU FM 88.9 FM will broadcast tonight's 1-hour program at 7 p.m. this Friday, March the 22nd. And the program will be televised on WFSU TV Thursday night, March the 28th at 7:30 p.m. And finally, the program will stay online at tlh.villagesquare.us. Now, all of the collaborators here tonight are very deeply grateful to the generous sponsor of tonight's program, Med Affinity. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panel for the evening. They are seated in alphabetical order, so it's easier for me to kind of figure out who they are. First is Carolyn Cummings. Carolyn is the chair of the County Commission and holds one of the at-large seats on the commission. Next to Carolyn is Mayor John Daly, Mayor of the City of Tallahassee and City Commissioner for Seat 4. Next to Mayor Daly is Rick Miner, Commissioner for District 3, County Commissioner for District 3. Next to Commissioner Miner is David O'Keefe. David is the County Commissioner for District 5. And next to David is Jack Porter. Jack is City Commissioner for Seat 3. Next to Jack is Curtis Richardson. Curtis is Tallahassee's Mayor Pro Tem and City Commissioner for Seat 2. Next to Curtis is Brian Welch. Brian is the Vice Chair of the County Commission and holds the District Seat 4. And finally, but not least, but finally, is Diane Williams-Cox, who is City Commissioner for Seat 5. Before we turn it over to the panel and to our moderator, a word about this evening. I'm proud to say, on behalf of the Village Square, is now in their 17th-year-old mission. It's a 17-year-old mission to build civic trust between people who don't look or think alike in American hometowns. At a time when politics has gotten increasingly contentious, when peddling division and gotcha social media moments seems to win the day too often, this evening will be a respite from fighting about small things. Citizens deserve better. We're going to go high. We want to talk about broad ideas and big thinking, and if it goes low, we're going to pull it up high again. We've got the Village Square's trademark civility bell here tonight in case we need any reminding, and I'll let everybody know what it sounds like. So, okay, enough of me. Let's get back to business. At this time, let me introduce my good friend, our moderator for the evening, WFSU's Media's Program Director for News, Tom Flanigan. Tom, the floor is yours.
Thank you, David. And thank you all for coming out here tonight. Do you realize how rare this kind of event really is? I did a little bit of research just over the past week to figure out how many communities in this country of any size, from little teeny tiny backwoods, crossroads, all the way up to major metropolitan areas, have city and county elected officials coming out to get before a group under the auspices of whether it's the Village Square or their own doing, It is vanishingly small. There are only a handful of other communities that do this kind of thing. And I think that's kind of endemic to where we are in the political process nationally. Some of the contentiousness and divisiveness that kind of percolated down. And that's something I think we in Tallahassee have been trying to keep at arm's length as much as we possibly can. So thank you, folks, for coming out and being a part of this here. Bunch of questions. We're going to get right to it. And for the first question, I would like to defer to the chair and the mayor as kind of the folks who represent at the upper echelon their own organizations here. Recently, the president of the Florida Chamber stated that there was no shared economic goal or vision between the city and the county. So where are we trying to go economically, and how are we going to get there? And Chair Cummings, if we can start with you, what do you think?
I think that the city and the county has done a great job of collaborating and working together. And one of the entities that we have utilized is certainly Blueprint. We have an Office of Economic Vitality, and through their efforts, I think we all can agree that Blueprint did a great job in bringing Amazon to our city. We worked in conjunction with the city. I think that's a great example of the two entities working together. We have an infusion with Amazon of $33 million in salary and benefits for over 1,500 people that they have employed. We're also looking at $133 million in overall boost to our economy. So I think it's probably a myth that says the city and the county is not working together. I think we have some great examples of the city and county working together for the benefit of our citizens.
Okay, Mayor Daley, Chair Cummings just talked about the Amazon project and things that are being done through the Blueprint organization or mechanism. What other things do you think are an example positively of collaboration between the city and the county when it comes to economic development or that sort of thing?
Sure. And Tom, first of all, thanks for hosting tonight. Thanks to WFSU and Village Square. This is always a great event. No, I do think that we're right in line. I do think that we are moving forward. I think our local region has one of the hottest economies in the state of Florida per capita. And not only what we're doing through Blueprint, but what we're doing individually as governments. Let's remember that we've been able to drop our unemployment to 2.7% last year alone. We've added over 15,000 jobs in the past 6 years. We're right on track as we expand our environment. Specific examples. We've invested over $500 million south of Tennessee Street in the past 5 years alone. Look at the public infrastructure investments that we're making. Look at what we're doing with Tallahassee International Airport and the expansion. We've got a lot of great things that are going on in this community, not only together through Blueprint, but also the city and the county individually. Proud of the work we're doing.
Any plans then to sit down with the chamber and say, we understand your position,
Sure.
but we beg to differ on these?
Well, I think one of the points that the chamber was making, which is a very valid point, is as a community and as a society, we should concentrate on third grade reading levels. And I know that that's one of the major points of the Florida Chamber. And of course, anything that we can do to help support our school system and our society in those efforts, we should. But when it comes to economic development, I know we're laser focused and we're moving forward.
Okay, on to the next question here. Since we talked about Blueprint, I'm so glad you brought that up because the Blueprint Intergovernmental Agency recently voted 8-4 in favor of allowing Blueprint funds to be used to purchase land and build mixed income affordable housing projects. I think we all have heard the term affordable housing in the past several years. There is an urgent need in many communities across the country, of course, to address the lack of affordable housing. The Florida legislature was also looking at that during the session just concluded. And this means both rental and also home ownership. So what role does the city and county play in the conversation? How can we work together, again, collaboratively towards more meaningful solutions? And let's just move it down the procession here. Commissioner Minor, from the county's viewpoint. What do you think? Affordable housing.
Thanks, Tom. And like the mayor said, it's good to be here with you all this evening. It's an event that I think a lot of us look forward to. Regarding affordable housing, our own studies have shown that Leon County needs to add 11,500 new affordable housing units by 2045. That's on top of what we already have projected in our pipeline. That is an incredible challenge. Now, we're not alone in that challenge. I mean, all across the state, all across the country, communities very similar to ours are finding similar challenges. Even the best practices around the state, Palm Beach County, for example, has a really good program trying to conquer their affordable housing challenge, and they're only adding 3,000 or 4,000 units over the course of a few years. It's a big challenge. What with Blueprint making the move at the last meeting, I think that's a good step forward, but right now there's no money allocated for that. So we've got to take a look at what the May economic projection is going to have, and then we'll figure out where we can go from there. Making sure, in my opinion, we don't want to take existing money from projects that have already been outlined, in many cases already having design costs sunk in those projects.
Okay, if I may say, Commissioner Jack Porter, you talk about affordable housing a lot. What are your thoughts here? Again, collaborating between city and county to move that forward.
I think the step we've taken at Blueprint is an incredible step forward, something that I was proud to work with my colleagues, with literally hundreds of community members who are pushing for this. There's no single bullet solution here. It's a complicated process and it's a complicated problem, but not doing anything is not an option. We are limited with our resources. This is something that the federal government, the state government have in many cases tied our hands with what we can do. But land is one of the most expensive parts of any affordable housing, low-income housing development, and making a dent in that problem. I think we all agree that everyone needs a safe and dignified place to live where they can afford, participate in the economy, feel a part of this community, and that's what the goal needs to be.
Okay, very good. And Commissioner Curtis Richardson.
Thank you, Tom. And affordable housing is not something that I've talked about in the 10 years that I've been on the commission, but have actually done something about it and worked towards it. When I came to the commission, South City was not in the CRA district, Frenchtown Southside CRA district. But in conversations with the Tallahassee Housing Authority director, Ms. Brenda Williams, we came to the conclusion that the Orange Avenue apartments were in terrible condition. It was a 50-year-old government housing project. And so we were able to get that area, the South City area, into the CRA district, and look what we have now, Columbia Gardens at South City. I serve on the board of the Tallahassee Lenders Consortium. We have a partnership with the Habitat for Humanity, and also I serve on the City Commission's Affordable Housing Advisory Committee. And so I've made that a priority, and we have made significant progress, but as was mentioned, it's an issue that plagues not only our community, but communities throughout this state.
Very good. This is a city question, and Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox, I'll throw it to you, but you also have the option of saying, I think that another one of my colleagues may be better informed on this one. I know it's been a bit controversial and contentious because the city remains kind of mired in contract negotiations with the firefighters. 3 have quit in the past week alone, the length of time this has been going on now. Kind of unusual. What is needed to break the logjam, do you think?
Well, thank you for that question, and again, thank you all for being here, and it's also a pleasure to be here again this year. Tom, as we all know, that when you're dealing with contract negotiations with the union, that's very delicate, and it's also specified in statute how you move forward. And I believe that we're going to eventually get to where we need to be. But in the meantime, unfortunately, it's being played out in the media. And that's never a good thing when you're trying to get resolution, because now someone has to choose winners and losers. And we're not going to do that, because we value all of our staff that work for the city of Tallahassee, the firefighters and all of them. But we must abide by our law regarding how we deal with union contracts. And I, for one, as a commissioner, will not step out of line and do something otherwise, because there are repercussions for doing those types of things. So I am monitoring the situation. We're being kept updated, but that process has been defined, and we will follow the process.
All right. This next question gets us a little bit into what we spoke of at the very outset of this discussion when it comes to civility and having an agreement in principle, if not in personality. Decorum, civility, sometimes short supply. at our local governmental meetings, not just in Tallahassee. This is not only our issue, but we see it a lot. Luckily, there has been no gunfire at any of our local governmental
Oh,
meetings.
please, don't say that out loud. Tom.
Yes.
I mean, seriously.
But
you can't
we
say that
have
out loud.
seen it
Jeez.
occur in some other places, and so that just shows how serious this can get. What concrete steps, though, in order to keep this positive, can you advocate to move towards a more collegial type of atmosphere, both in your own bodies and also between city and county? And if we start with the mayor and then come back to the chair, please.
Well, to address your issue first, we've taken significant physical steps in City Hall to protect people's safety, with everything from metal detectors going into the chambers. And I say that because you brought up the violent aspect of it. But look, we start every city commission meeting as the mayor trying to remind the public to please join us in setting the tone and the vision and making sure that we operate in a civil manner. And for the most part, everybody does. And I get that and I appreciate that. You're going to have those that come in and they're going to be hot on whatever the issue is. And, you know, as mayor, it's also my responsibility to make sure that everybody has their freedom of speech, especially to redress the government if you're upset with what's going on. But we have to maintain order. We have to maintain civility, and it's important that we do so. But I think that we have a responsibility as well as elected officials. I mean, my poor friend, the chair, had to gavel down 3 of our colleagues out of order at the last Blueprint meeting. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think that we need to redouble our efforts as electeds as well to set the tone and set the example. That's just me personally.
And Chair Cummings, what do you think, adding to the mayor's comments?
Adding to the mayor's comment, Mr. Flanigan, and let me say this too. I failed to thank you and WFSU for this forum. I see all of my colleagues did so I just want to double back and thank you and thank all the audience participants that are here. At our county commission meeting last night, I commended my fellow commissioners for the way that they allowed me to not only conduct the meeting, but I commended them for the congeniality that we have on the commission. We tried to set the tone of respecting each other. As chair, I recognize that all 7 of us have strong personalities. We have strong opinions about issues, but I try to allow the commissioners to express themselves, but urge them to do it in a professional manner, in a respectful manner, so that we can all eventually, after we've heard everybody's opinion, then we can come together and have a resolution that's in the best interest of our citizens. So I believe first and foremost, we have to not lose sight of why we are here. We're here to represent the citizens. And as colleagues, I think sometimes we lose sight of that. We have our own personal agendas. But if we keep that at the forefront and recognize that we need to respect each other, then we can have more fruitful meetings.
Under the auspices of the Sunshine Law many years ago, just as a quick personal aside, I recall when the county commission and sometimes the city commission would hold informal dinners. And they'd open it up to the media, and there would be a poll reporter who would be there, and it was not really, no business was really conducted, but it was more of just interpersonal interaction. Just a bunch of folks who work together, getting together in an informal situation. And that seemed to sometimes lower the temperature. I don't know if that is something that might be revisited at some point, but it seemed to work back then. So just threw that out for thought. But turning back to gun violence, which we hate to talk about, but it appears the tools that the local government is using to combat this may not be working the way that everyone would like them to. Is it time to pivot to something else, do you think? And if so, what? And if not, do we have to accept just the fact that gun violence exists, is going to persist, there's nothing that can be done? Commissioner Richardson.
Well, Tom, I think, you know, because guns are so easily available to young people, particularly these days, but what we know from our police staff, 53% of the gun violence in our community comes from guns that were stolen from unlocked cars, loaded guns from unlocked cars. over 50% of the violence, the gun violence that we see is domestic in nature. Right. So those are the issues that we're having to deal with. We're partnering now with the Urban League and the Sheriff's Department, other law enforcement, and they've got a campaign now with media, billboards, encouraging people to not leave loaded guns in their cars, because that is the source of a lot of the gun violence that's happening in our community.
Okay, and if I could, Commissioner Welch, since in your day job you deal with young people every single day, what thoughts might you have, again, on mitigating the possibility that some of these kids are going to think, hey, the ultimate solution is as close as that gun?
Thanks, Tom. Can you guys hear me? Mm-hmm. Okay. You know, I think it's a complicated issue. I think that our sheriff did a fantastic service to the community with his Anatomy of a Homicide project, a real analytical approach at looking at the source, looking at some of the causes of our gun violence problems. I think that when you combine, you know, lack of hope, you know, menacing environments, with young people, you know, you can't law enforcement your way out of gun violence. There has to be a conversation about what goes on at home. There has to be a conversation about how do we keep kids in school? How do we increase those third grade reading levels? How do we keep kids from being suspended? Things like that, I think, will go a long way. I think our local law enforcement does a great job both at TPD and at the Sheriff's Office. I think we have great leadership in those departments that are really trying to solve a very complicated problem. And again, it's hard to legislate your way into public safety from a gun violence standpoint. You've got to have conversations that are difficult. You got to go into homes. You got to encourage people to go to school. We got to provide job opportunities for young people, get them into Lively, get them into our workforce education opportunities. And I think we're doing a good job of that. We're doing our best. We're moving in the right direction, and all you can do is kind of chip away at it.
Okay. Does anyone else have any suggestions, ideas, thoughts? Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and I'm afraid, let's also not forget, and I completely agree with Commissioner Welch and what he just said, but we can't legislate our way. When I was on the county commission, the state of Florida legislature preempted our ability, all local governments in the state of Florida, from imposing any local ordinance in relation to gun violence, period. We are still under that rule. Even if we came up with the best idea in the world between the city and the county, we are not allowed to do so by the Florida legislature. And until that exemption is repealed on the state level, we will always be in this place. Curtis is absolutely right. People ask all the time, how can we make a significant positive impact in gun violence in Tallahassee? And I will repeat what he said. Take your firearms inside and lock them up at night. Don't leave them in your car overnight. There's several campaigns. The sheriff has one. Urban League has one. I mean, this is not a Second Amendment question. This is about being a responsible gun owner. If you have a firearm and you keep it in your car during the day, take it inside, properly lock it up. We can have a significant impact, just that action alone, with responsible gun ownership and people taking their guns inside.
Okay. Yes.
Thank you, Tom. Springboarding off of what Commissioner Welch said with Sheriff McNeil, you know, in addition to the Anatomy of a Homicide study, he also has instigated the creation of the Commission on Status of Men and Boys, which is preventive in terms of, you know, nationwide we know by data which types of young people are at risk for even being victims of violence or perpetrators of that violence. So based on that data here locally, I give the sheriff a lot of credit for basically establishing that commission and taking steps to assist those young kids who are right at the cusp right now of going in one direction or another. And with the right amount of funding and effort to help them find alternatives to being on the street, joining gangs, I think that will also help us stem the problem.
Okay, Commissioner O'Keefe, you had your hand up there.
Absolutely, thank you, and thank you for hosting this event. So the fact is, we have to address the root causes of crime if we're going to make our community safer. We need to be investing in education, in good jobs, social services, and affordable housing. That's how we reduce crime and help our families and neighborhoods and communities feel safe. So I say that to say we need to continue doing that. I want to give credit to the sheriff, the Council on Status of Men and Boys, the Council on Status of Women and Girls, and the Children's Services Council, all of these organizations that are stepping up to fill the community needs that are the root causes of crime are the long-term solution to making our community safer. And it is a long-term solution.
Okay.
And Tom, could I
Commissioner
add
Richardson.
too, we have a very successful program with the city of Tallahassee. The acronym is TEMPO, and I can never remember. I'm having that senior moment, remembering what TEMPO stands for. But it was a program started by one individual, Dr. Kimball Thomas, who was going out into the neighborhood and interfacing what we call kids who are at risk, who might have dropped out of school, might have had a small scrape with the law. But what he would do is work with them, if they needed a high school diploma, he would enroll them in adult and community education, get them a GED, get them into Lively to get a job, training for a job skill, TCC if they wanted to go that route. That program has been wildly successful. We've had, I think, about 1,500 kids go through that program over the time that it's been in place. Zero recidivism. Not one has been involved at all in criminal activity. And so we're proud of what we've done through the TEMPO program. They now have a budget and a staff, and the program has been wildly successful. In addition to our Future Leaders Academy, where we hire young people. We started out during the summer. It was a summer employment program. Now we extended that program to make it a year-round program for young people so that we can keep them off the streets, keep them occupied, let them make money so that they can then assist their families if they're economically constrained.
Okay. And Madam Chair.
Yes, and just very briefly, of course, I agree to the sentiments of all of my colleagues here. But I believe we have to be about teaching our children alternatives as far as conflict resolution. And one of the things that we have done, I'm on the Children's Services Council. We announced yesterday, had a press conference where we are funding 11 summer programs to engage close to 1,000 youth this summer. And they will be concentrated in STEM programs. They will be exposed to dance and art. And I think we have to show our children that there are other ways. We have to engage them. And in doing that engagement, we have to teach them that conflict resolution does not end with gun violence. And I think it all ties into us focusing on our children, having programs for them so that we can just change the whole trajectory of their future. Expose them to dance, to music, to drama. And so that their young minds now can start on a path to what they want for a positive future. And I think they will come away saying gun violence, even having a gun, has no place in my future. So we
Okay.
have got to invest in our young people.
Thank you. Commissioner Williams-Cox first, please.
I want to make sure that we don't want to put the message out there that it's only children who are participating in gun violence, because we have adults who are actively engaging in gun violence and taking lives as well. And we know that some of that is due to the lack of mental health support. And so we've also looked at the need for more mental health in some areas, because there are a lot of stressors that happen in our communities, a lot of triggers. And folks not knowing how to deal with them leads to gun violence from time to time. But I just wanted to just plug it, that it's not just our young people, it's our folks who are young at heart who are also engaging in gun violence. And nevertheless, we're trying to battle that as well.
This has been all across the board. Commissioner Porter, any thoughts you want to throw into the mix here?
One thing that hasn't been mentioned, but is similar to what Commissioner Cummings mentioned, that the city's taken action on, is funding restorative justice programs at the city. And we have some that are offered already at a community center, but that's something that I think we can expand on, that we're going to see the fruit of in years to come. And I want to see greater collaboration and communication with our public defender, with our state attorney. Our criminal justice system is failing us and has contributed to this point. So continuing those conversations, collaborating with our superintendent of schools. I don't see those conversations happening as much as I think they can, and we would benefit from that.
Wonderful. This has been a really good discussion because I know just how volatile this issue is in the eyes and ears and minds of the public. Here is another one, though, and this is breaking news because this just came down today because of Governor DeSantis's action. The Florida legislature, of course, passing legislation, and Governor DeSantis this morning signing a bill that bans the unhoused from sleeping or setting up camp in public spaces. And as you're aware, the law requires municipalities to remove these individuals, and if they fail to do so, it allows individuals, business owners, and the state attorney general to sue for failing to enforce the new restrictions. And the bill further suggests that cities set up designated encampments to concentrate the unhoused, providing a minimal level of infrastructure like running water and restrooms. So, with this now in place, what does the city and county do by way of response to what is a new Florida statute? Chair Cummings.
Yes. At this point, I want to see what rules are put in place. I have concerns about that legislation because it indicates that a municipality or a government that permits homeless individuals to sleep in public places. So I'm not sure how permits is defined, but I think by and large it's going to require more funding. I understand that the legislature allocated several $1 million, but we're talking about 67 counties within the state of Florida. I don't believe that funding is sufficient, but I also know that here in Leon County, we have a homeless issue, but it's not as bad as some of the other cities in Florida. And so I'm hoping that once we see the rules that will be promulgated so that this particular legislation can be carried out, I believe we will be able to make provisions for our homeless population within the confines that we have. With the Kearney Center, we have other service providers that provide overnight beds for our homeless. I don't envision Leon County, Tallahassee, ever having any homeless camps for our homeless individuals.
Okay, same deal, Mayor Daley? Or?
Well, I think Commissioner Cummings, the chair, said it best. And, you know, this is going to be one that we're going to have to sit down and put our heads together to figure out. So first of all, let's remember that the city of Tallahassee and Leon County do not have a division of homelessness within the government itself. We depend on our third-party nonprofits to really step up to the plate and help us out. And I know I am very appreciative of the great work that they do. And Carolyn's right. We don't have the same homeless situation that you see in other communities across the state of Florida. The chain of parks downtown is not an encampment per se. And so what happens is that I think when we do an initial analysis, it'll be interesting to see the encampments that you might envision in this community, whether they're on private property or public property. And that's the first thing that you have to determine, whether they have permission to be there or not. But we're going to get together with the nonprofit community under the auspice of the new legislation. We'll put our heads together. I have confidence in our emergency shelter, and I have confidence in the great men and women that work in these nonprofits that help us out in regards to those experiencing homelessness, and we're going to move forward.
Oh, okay. Commissioner Minor, you had been really digging into this issue here along the North Monroe Street corridor as part of your district here. What are your thoughts?
Yes, thank you, Tom. And also, I used to be the CEO of Second Harvest at the Big Bend, dealing a lot with folks that are on the street that are in need of food. So I've got some experience in this. My understanding of the law that was signed today by the governor is that the private sector has the ability to sue local governments if there is not some provision for folks to be in a public encampment if there are no resources elsewhere. The important thing to note here about Leon County and Tallahassee is, though, for example, the Kearney Center right now has an average of about 320 people there every single night, and the capacity is 425. Right. So I don't think we're going to be in the step where we have to think or discuss whether or not we have a public encampment in Leon County or Tallahassee. I think it'll be quite some time before we get to that point. One important thing to say, and I say this to everybody, regardless of what they feel about the issue, we need to have compassion for people that are on the street. Many of them have suffered some type of trauma in their childhood or young, as adults, and they are just struggling from day to day. At the same time, I don't believe it's safe to be out there sleeping overnight. It's not. People on North Monroe, homeless people have been killed, stabbed on North Monroe. It's not a safe place to be. Number one, we have to have compassion for people out on the street. Number two, we also have an obligation as local government elected officials to ensure that our neighborhoods are safe, that our businesses are in an environment where they thrive. Both of those things can be true. In my mind, for us to truly address homelessness, we need to tackle both of those elements.
Okay, very good. Commissioner O'Keefe?
Thank you, Tom. I'll just echo, we're waiting on rules. You know, these laws, I believe, are unfortunate because they put the county, in my case, if it were to impact us and apply to us, open to lawsuits, significant costs that wouldn't actually go to help solve the homelessness crisis if that's how the rules come down. And so, you know, all of the evidence for ending homelessness confirms the most cost-effective way to end homelessness is permanent supportive housing. So I'm going to go contradictory here and say maybe there's a little surprise positive how this comes down. If the threat of lawsuit forces us to more cost-effectively create more permanent supportive housing instead of paying out lawsuits, anything that helps us get more permanent supportive housing will end homelessness.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Porter, what do you think?
Thank you, Tom. I think this continues a trend that we've seen from the legislature, really overstepping and not providing local government the support they need to address these very critical problems. This is not a solution to homelessness, but I do think it's an opportunity for us to step up and go above and beyond, explore alternatives, get more creative, and of course lead with compassion and see the ways that we can work with our partners who've been amazing, but do even more. So I think that we would be wise to take this as an opportunity to go above and beyond and explore alternative solutions that maybe we haven't explored yet.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner
Yeah,
Richardson?
thank you, Tom. I would say whatever we do, we have to do in a humane fashion. These are children of God. I'm a man of religion. I believe in that. And we owe that to them. If whatever the issue is that they're confronting, we have to do whatever we do in a humane manner in providing resources for those that are homeless at this point. I agree with Commissioner Porter, having been in the legislature. This is not news that they put unfunded mandates on local governments, and this is one of those. And so we will have to get together as local government, both the city and the county, and come up with solutions to this. And if it takes going back to the legislature, because what they've allocated is not going to take care, it may take care of the need in downtown Miami alone, but certainly not the 67 counties and 400 municipalities across the state. And so we're going to have to get together and put our heads together, as has been said, to come up with a solution that is humane and what God would expect of us.
Florida League of Cities, Florida Association of Counties, lawsuits pending. What do you think?
Well, that may be the route that is taken. I have not heard that conversation yet from the League of Cities, but it's clear that it's an unfunded mandate, and if it takes having to go the legal route, then that's what we'll have to do, because we have to make sure that we don't overtax our local communities to address this issue, and it's been exacerbated by what the governor has just did in signing that law.
Okay, Commissioner Welch.
Thanks, Tom. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I would defer to Chair Cummings down there as a legal mind, but I would expect a lot of lawsuits associated with the First Amendment aspects of this and public property. I feel like Commissioner O'Keefe makes a good point. The sort of punitive aspects of this don't really apply until you don't have capacity for like emergency sheltering capacity, and I don't necessarily know if we're in that boat yet. The concept of encampments and public camping and things like that, there was an ordinance at the county a couple of years ago that was very similar, but not nearly as expansive or punitive. And I think the legislature sees that and goes, well, if you guys aren't going to do anything about this, we'll do something about it. And I think the tone at least according to the bill sponsors in the legislature that I've read, is similar to the tone and the intent of the county ordinance that didn't get anywhere 2 years ago, which is essentially what, as a community, are we going to accept as an acceptable living condition, right? Commissioner Minor kind of makes that point. It's like, yeah, we have to have compassion, but I would tell you compassion is not letting someone sleep on the street with their head feet away from the traffic, okay? So we have to really focus in on what we're doing. I think expanding all these, all the services that we provide and housing and everything like that, obviously that's a big thing to have to deal with, but you know, we'll see how it shakes out.
Okay, we'll close this one out with Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Thank you. Serving on the Big Bend Continuum of Care, which is the regional lead for homelessness in our community, which that the city of Tallahassee has provided millions of dollars of funding. This particular nonprofit represents several counties around the Big Bend area. We understand that when they do the point-in-time count, there's been like 800, less than 1,000 people that have been counted to have been homeless. Now, there may be more that they may have missed a count, but I think that many times we think of the problem as being, you know, thousands, but it's based on the count, it's less than 1,000. But we also know that many of the folks who land here in our community are not from our community. They've been sent here or brought here because there are no services in some of the surrounding counties. So it may be time that we reach out to these other counties to help us financially provide some additional support. The legislature, of course, has, you know, like, as we've said, just given us another unfunded mandate, but this is just the beginning of it. I'm sure it's not going to be the end of it, but I just want to kind of put it in focus. We're talking about perhaps less than 1,000 people who've been counted to be homeless. And then we also know that there are those who don't necessarily consider themselves homeless and don't want to be sheltered. There are those who want to live outdoors. We've learned that in our interaction with some of the folks that we come in contact with. But my colleagues are correct. We've got to lead with compassion and humanity, because but be for the grace of God, there go I. And so we've got to think about that when we're dealing with our brothers and sisters who need this assistance.
Thank you. At the behest of our own Margie Menzel, I have a question for county folks. So city people can lean back for a second here. But you can kick in if you want to. That's fine. This regards the Children's Services Council. And the issue isn't that anyone has duplicated services already being provided in Leon County. It's just if the county realigns its funding of nonprofits by sending the ones that serve children through the CSC mechanism as a funding entity here. Would that create duplication, and would that essentially be breaking the word to taxpayers, because it runs counter to how the CSC was described when it was first advanced to the voters for approval? We defer to the chair for the first response.
Thank you, Mr. Flanigan. And I am the county's representative on the Children's Services Council. And what we have done on the council is we have established some criteria to evaluate service providers to determine whether or not they're actually moving the needle for our children in the areas that they are specified to provide services. There is a concern that those service providers that now go through the USPS provision will be shifted to the Children's Services Council. There's been a 2-year moratorium at the county. We agreed to wait for 2 years to see if the Children's Services Council could agree with the city and the county on a mechanism to fund those service providers who are now funded through that process. And so I feel certain that within the next year or so, or next few months, as we look at this issue, we will make sure that those entities that provide services to our children will be serviced through the Children's Services Council. We will make sure that there's no duplication of services. We will make sure that the services that they provide are quality services for our children, and that they, in fact, are moving the needle toward bettering our children, and especially in early childhood, the third grade reading level, and even up to the 8th grade reading testing. So we are equipped to do that. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's going to take several sessions so that we can come up with services for our children that will be provided by those service providers now. And I promise you, it will not be duplicated. These will be quality services that we will evaluate at the end of those contracts to make sure that they're the services that we want to continue for our children, and to make sure that our children are moving in the positive direction that we want them to go in.
Thank you. That being said, any of your county colleagues want to kick in any additional information? Commissioner Welch.
Thank you, Tom, and obviously we are very proud of the service of our chair, Cummings, on the CSC, and it's really about maximizing resources. We have very limited resources at the county for our CHSP program. The city kicks in a little more than the county does, but it's also a very little amount of money. So we're trying to maximize those resources. Our community has voted for a dedicated funding source to try and fill in some gaps when it comes to children's services. So it makes sense, I would say, fiscally and just from a policy standpoint, to try and sort of shift some of those programs over. The problem is we want to make sure that we have a safety net. We want to make sure we don't leave anybody hanging. We want to make sure that there's matching funds that come down from the federal government that are still qualified for. So it's going to be a process, but I think ultimately the goal here is to just maximize our resources. We don't have a lot. We have other needs in the community that those resources can be geared towards, like homelessness, like panhandling. We have host deputies now, and we're trying to expand, supportive housing and emergency sheltering and all those things. And so CHSP is really our only mechanism to do that at the county level. And so, we're trying to be as efficient as we possibly can.
Very good. Commissioners O'Keefe or Minor, anything? Yes, sir. O'Keefe.
Thank you. This was something we voted on recently, which came up pretty quick, close to the deadline, and so I'm happy that we have deferred any changes till 2027. That will at least give us the opportunity to have long-term discussions to make sure something's not falling off. But I want to point out a few things. We got legal advice that is not against any law or anything like that and does not produce any duplication. And I also want to remind everybody of the independence of the Children's Services Council, of its own policies, procedures, board, and rules. And so they get to decide what they do. The county can't dictate anything. And so I do think, just as a gut check level, I don't think voters expected to reduce funding from this county and apply it over to CSC. I thought they voted for new money for new services. And the way I see it is, if we have service providers that can get money from both to expand more services, we need more services. And if our service provider expands to the maximum of their capacity, then they'll choose which funding source works best. But the whole idea is to expand services. And so within the constraints we have budget-wise, I think that we ought to stick to only adding to the extent we can when it comes to CSC services.
Fair enough. Now I got something for the city folks. City's Charter Review Committee is now recommending several amendments to the city charter, and that includes one that would allow commissioners to set their own pay after convening a citizens panel to study it. Do you like that idea? Should city commissioners get a pay raise? Why or why not? We start with the mayor.
Well, I think I'd like to see exactly the language. I haven't seen the language. I don't know if it impacts the position of the mayor per se as much as the city commissioners, and so I'm going to hold off until I actually see the language in the recommendation before casting judgment.
Okay. Anybody else for the city?
Yeah, Tom, I think that it is an issue that we need to look at. I certainly applaud the Charter Review Commission for the work that they did and the recommendations that they've come up with that will be presented to us next week. You know, I've been fortunate. It's been very difficult when I was working full-time, I'm retired now, to be able to do both. And I can see in the future there will be individuals who would like to serve, but they can't do it because of the salary that we're paid, which is half of what county commissioners and the mayor are paid. And so it certainly is something that we need to look at. I like the recommendation that it be a citizens committee that takes a look at it and makes a recommendation to the commission. But I think it certainly is the right direction for us to go in at this point.
In the few minutes that we have remaining, and this will be followed by a free-for-all, if you will, getting input from the audience, not only those who are here in person, but also those who are tuning in online to kind of add to the discussion, and we invite our elected officials to stick around for that. Won't be long or onerous, but we wanted to get some more questions fielded tonight if we could. But maybe just a general discussion to take us out here to the conclusion of our broadcast portion, if you will. Because we've been talking about this a lot tonight, whether it was the matter of the homeless situation or some of the other things that came out of the legislature. You almost lost the comp plan. Yes. You came really, really close to having a legislature swoop in and say, okay, local governments, we'll take it from here. Yes. You all can handle garbage pickup or whatever else you do, but most of this is going to come out of Tallahassee. Yeah. How do you, as elected officials, and with your colleagues in the other jurisdictions statewide, get in front of the legislature and say, guys, maybe this is not a good way to go? Could you at least check in with us before you advance some of these cause celebs that you've been working on? Commissioner Welch, what do you think?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you pointed at me. I apologize.
Okay.
You want to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. I love me some Commissioner Richardson. I don't want to get in front of him. Tom, I think that this is a question we've had repeatedly, and it's like, I think we have a legislative delegation that represents us pretty well out there, Representative Tant and Senator Simon. We've got to influence them and sort of impart on them the importance of, we're the point of touch, right? We are in the neighborhoods. We are dealing with the small issues and the big issues, and it's important for the legislature not to usurp the role of local government. Mm-hmm. And we see that continually, whether we're talking about term limits on county commissioners or comp plan, or homelessness. And so it's a problem. I think that the best way to influence legislators is to say, hey, someday you're going to be a county commissioner. Someday you're going to run for a city commission in your own town. Maybe you want to have some impact, right? And so we have great organizations, whether we're talking about the Florida Association of Counties or the Florida League of Cities, that goes up there and they do a really good job of advocating, letting legislators know the positions of local government and how we feel about it and the importance of local government.
Do you think more has to be done, though, with the electorate, since that's kind of where all this starts? Commissioner O'Keefe and then Commissioner Meyer.
Thank you, Tom. That's where I was going with this. I'm new to this politics thing, so I'll defer to the experts on lobbying and relationships with the folks at the Capitol, which is important. But one thing I've tried to do is, it ultimately comes down to the voters. And I hate learning that telling my voters I wanted to do this for you and the legislature says I can't. It's not really an acceptable answer to me. And so when dangerous bills are coming down the pipeline, I like to find a way to communicate to my constituents, hey, this is happening, I want you to know about it, and I want you to be able to speak up. Now, we're fortunate because our representatives, my constituents, have excellent delegation. However, they can tell family across Florida. To me, one thing I'm trying to do is bring attention to these bills when they come up so that if the electorate wants, they can call the representatives and tell them that they want local control.
Okay, and Commissioner Minor.
One thing that we have both at the City Commission and County Commission is the Florida Association of Counties and the Florida League of Cities, who are very strong, talented advocates for talking to legislators about the cons of preemption. And a good thing about the FAC, Florida Association of Counties, and the Florida League of Cities is that it's a bipartisan coalition in each of those statewide associations, which means that you have Republican county commissioners, in many cases representing the same jurisdiction as many of these senators and House members, going and talking to them about how, listen, the state has incredible power to usurp local governments in this state. They just do. It doesn't mean they should. And local government closest to the people manages local issues best. We all know what the neighborhood of Providence needs, for example, much more than a senator from Naples who might vote on statewide policy that affects Providence neighborhood. That's how it should be. I think we do a darn good job on the city and the county commission about reaching out to our constituents and understanding what they need their local government to do.
Commissioner Richardson.
Tom, a couple of things I wanted to, because they I think most greatly impact the city of Tallahassee. One is the utility board. There have been attempts, and I think it's going to come back next year, to establish a utility board that would take away the authority of the city to regulate our public utilities. We know that 50% of our property is off the tax roll here in Tallahassee, so that's a tremendous source of income. The other is the airport authority. There is a move to insert a state-appointed airport authority, again, to take away local control of our airport. And then lastly was the notion of a supermajority to pass a property tax increase. So now you're taking away revenue, but then you tell us, which none of us would want to do, you're going to have to use a simple majority to increase property taxes to support those issues, programs, and services in the community. And so they're really starting to, this preemption stuff is getting out of control, and we may have to address it through the electorate, because I don't think we have, I don't know if I can get political, but we don't have an administration, I'll put it that way, and legislature that's truly looking at how these impact our local governments, especially the city of Tallahassee.
Okay, almost out of time. Commissioner Porter, you get the last word.
Thank you. I'll just say we've got to get money out of politics. I mean, these preemptions are not coming out of nowhere. They're being driven by special interests, by large developers, by Comcast, by private utilities, by Airbnb and other hospitality groups. That is what's driving a lot of this preemption legislation, and I think getting to the root of that is getting that kind of money out of politics.
Ladies and gentlemen, the members of the Leon County Commission and the City of Tallahassee Commission here with us on the Our Town, sponsored by the Village Square, WFSU Public Media, and a host of other supporters for which we have eternal gratitude. Thank you all for being with us this evening, and we invite our audience here and also the audience online to stick around and provide some additional interaction for these folks. And we'll be picking that up in just a few moments. Thank you for joining us via online, radio, and TV. And we hope to see you during the next Our Town, hosted by the Village Square and WFSU Public Media. Our Tallahassee Town Hall continues with members of the Tallahassee City Commission and the Leon County Board of County Commissioners. And our input now comes from you folks, not only the ones here at the WFSU Public Media Studios, but also the people who have been watching online and had some thoughts and inquiries for their elected officials. So we're going to get right to it here. What is the best method? This is an easy one, guys. What is the best method for citizens to share feedback to the city and the county? Let's have just a designated commissioner from each body to answer that query, if we could.
From the county, each one of the county commissioners has an email address. We also have telephones, and any citizen can appear at our county commission meetings on a monthly basis. So we are very accessible.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
I agree. We all have, you can communicate with us via email and call us. I think we're all very accessible and readily accessible to meet with anybody.
You can also catch us at Publix pretty much
Yeah.
very frequently.
Or Winn-Dixie.
Winn-Dixie.
Or CVS Pharmacy.
Winn-Dixie.
Yeah, and both Commissioner Minor and Commissioner O'Keefe do not speak out of turn. I learned long ago, if you carry a portable recorder around, if you see any of you guys in Publix or CVS, didn't you all say something about that at last week's meeting?
Well,
You want us talking to the
actually happened to me
So,
2 days
yeah, I
in a
embarrass
row.
them a lot. Here's something, though, a little bit more cosmic, if you will. Commissioner Williams-Cox, where do you want to see Tallahassee in 5 years?
In 5 years, I would like to see Tallahassee still holding her own, having learned from our past in doing the things that we're doing now to incentivize our economic growth, in making sure that we are taking care of our citizens, that we have good public safety, and we have a great quality of life. I have grandchildren who are of age that I would hope will want to stay here in Tallahassee and have their families. So in 5 years, I'd like to see us having good paying jobs, having a good housing available for everyone, continue to have beautiful parks and neighborhoods, as well as having just a good outlook in life for moving forward, moving our city forward.
Okay, Commissioner Welch.
Oh, gosh, I would love to see us continue to nurture, some private sector economic activity. I'd like to see us continue to invest in our parks and recreation and quality of life. I'm sounding exactly like Commissioner Williams-Cox here, but I think that Tallahassee is kind of at a crossroads in our identity, right? We want to continue to welcome. We want to be a place people want to come to, right? And we already know people are wanting to come here, so we just got to keep pushing on down the road, make smart choices with our public investments, continue to make sure our infrastructure keeps up with our growth, and try to provide the best quality of life that we possibly can, while being fiscally responsible and accessible to our constituents and all those things. And I think that if we do that, the future is bright.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson.
Thank you, Tom. The one thing I'd like to see is that, Tallahassee has been twice designated an All-America city. But there are parts of our community, if you ask them, they would say they don't feel like they live in an All-America city. And it's in some of the neighborhoods surrounding where I live on the south side of town. And so my goal has been, as a commissioner, is to make our citizens feel like wherever they live in this city, that they are part of the All-America label that we've achieved. And that is providing safe neighborhoods, housing, all of the things that my colleagues have talked about that make for a good city, that we grow, but we grow in a responsible way. We grow in a way that we take care of our environment at the same time that we're growing, that we achieve our energy goals, and that is to be carbon neutral by the year 2050, if not sooner. So those are the kinds of things that I look at when I look at where Tallahassee needs to go, where we are going. I think we're headed in the right direction, but we've still got work to do as a community.
Okay, Commissioner Porter.
I couldn't agree more with what my colleagues have said. I think that we be a place where no one goes without a home. Everyone has freedom of movement. You don't have to have a car to go to work, to visit friends, to visit family, a place where everyone feels that they belong, where everyone has access to our beautiful parks, our beautiful nature. I think those are some of the things that I see in our future, and I think that all of that is within our grasp.
Okay, Commissioner O'Keefe.
I'm going to dream big. In 5 years, I want to see thousands of new units for families who now pay over 50% of their monthly income for housing. I want thousands of those families to easily afford their housing. I also want to see 1,000 more slots for young children and early learning providers so that families have access to affordable early learning providers. Those are some of the two biggest challenges we face, and I want to see bold numbers in 5 years.
Okay, Commissioner Minor.
Thanks, Tom. A lot of these ideas have been terrific. I think most of us would agree on all of them. Commissioner Richardson put it well in terms of like improving some of our neighborhoods. North Monroe, South Monroe, Pensacola, Tharp Street, Orange Avenue. There's some good people that live in these neighborhoods, and what we need to try to do is help elevate the aesthetic appeal of those areas, help them be safe, help them make sure that we've got ample housing stock in those neighborhoods so that families can live there and raise their kids there. That's number one. Number two, I want to have Innovation Park live up to the research park and the economic engine that we all deserve it to be. That's a whole answer in itself, but I'm going to leave it at that. There's a great example, Sid Martin Biotech Facility down in Alachua County. That is a perfect example of where Innovation Park could be in 20 years. Mark Wilson talked about a vision for Tallahassee. That's our vision. Let's get behind that and grow that so that can become a huge economic engine that it must be. It's just waiting for us to take advantage of that. And then finally, I'd like to see passenger rail on its way to being restored in Tallahassee within 5 years.
Okay. Hop on the train. I guess Mayor Daley.
Well, I agree with everything all my colleagues on both the city and the county have said. So let me just sum up by saying we were recently named one of the top 20 medium-sized cities out of 17,000 municipalities in the United States of America to live, work, and play.
Great.
In 5 years, I want to be number one.
Hear, hear.
Right.
Okay. We'll keep watching the rankings.
Thank you.
Chair Cummings.
Mr. Flanigan, of course, I adopt everybody's sentiment on what they would love to see in 5 years. In addition to that, I guess my utopian notion is that we utilize Florida State University and Florida A&M University and Tallahassee Community College more, that we become more collaborators with them so that when our children graduate from these institutions, that we have something here in Leon County, Tallahassee, to keep them here. And I think we need to be about creating jobs so that our children and our adults alike can make wages that are livable wages so they can purchase homes and purchase cars and send their children to college and just realize the American dream.
Accelerated by the fact that this is our bicentennial year for the city of Tallahassee and Leon County, we are now into the artsy time of the year. Word of South, Chain of Parks Art Festival, Southern Shakespeare Festival. We have a Gospel Jubilee that's coming up. All kinds of fun
Springtime
stuff
Tallahassee.
that's
Springtime
going on.
Tallahassee. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So let me get some more input. What do y'all think as far as ongoing efforts by the city and the county to promote additional kinds of artistic festivals and observances, particularly around that wonderful Cascades Park and Adderley Theater that we have right now? Who has some ideas?
Well, Tom, Commissioner Williams Cox and I serve on the Tallahassee Development Council board, and certainly that is the mission of the TDC, is to increase artistic, human, arts types, activities and events for the community. And we see that happening. As a matter of fact, it's the Tourist Development Council that has planned the Jubilee Festival this coming weekend. And so those are the kinds of things we'd like to see more of, because it increases tourism, increases our bed tax, and then we're able to do more of that for the community. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at through the TDC. And so we certainly look forward to working with our partners at the County Commission as we bring those types of offerings to our community.
Okay. Any other ideas? Commissioner Welch?
Yeah, thank you. I used to sit on the Tourist Development Council with Commissioner Richardson. I think that if you look at this being a pretty special year in the history of this community, I think our lineup of performances and special things that are going on is going to be incredible. I had the opportunity about a month or two ago to go and welcome the crowd to the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra in Ruby Diamond Concert Hall. And I mean, I'm frankly not much of a symphony orchestra guy, if you couldn't tell. But I sat there mesmerized, Tom. I totally loved it. It was beautiful, incredible. It had pictures of our history flashing in the background as they played this incredible music. I think that what the city and the county and Blueprint have done at Cascades Park really sets the stage, no pun intended, for incredible performances that I am looking forward to seeing as we move into the future, but certainly over the next year. I think the folks in the community really should pay attention, check our websites, check our social medias, check all the mediums you can to find out what's going on, what's available, and get out there and really experience our beautiful community and with the arts as the main thing.
Commissioner Williams-Cox.
I would love to see more children participating in the arts. We see them kind of on the stage in a limited capacity, but I'd love to see them doing more and bringing them on younger and watch them grow into, because we know that when children are involved in music and arts, that is something that can help keep them out of some other activities that may not be so positive. So I would love to see more of our children participating in artsy kinds of things, at amphitheater or around the city, wherever it may be, wherever the opportunity presents itself. And especially the children from the south side of town being exposed and having the opportunity to attend the symphony orchestra or something along that line that may be out of the normal path that they've been in. Those kinds of things are just impactful. I came to Florida A&M. Everybody knows I'm from Quincy. I came to Florida A&M because of the band, and I do not play an instrument. I just wanted to be where the band was. So we find inspiration where we find inspiration that leads you to a place like being here today.
All right. Commissioner Porter.
Thank you, Tom. This is my favorite time of year. I think the events that are coming up are amazing. I think I agree with Commissioner Williams-Cox. As much programming as we can have, the better. Activating our public parks, activating our community centers more and more. I think we'll see a return on that investment. On a personal note, I've been on the waiting list at the Lafayette Arts Center for their beginners ceramics class for 4 years. So I would love to see some investment there. More spots, please.
Okay, great. Anyone else? Commissioner Minor.
Thanks, Tom. I have 2 young girls, 10 and 5, and so I see a lot of our events that we have around town through their eyes. In chain of parks, Word of South, all the stuff that we have is just, it's a treasure. The arts are another thing that make life worth living. And we have the arts in spades in Tallahassee. One thing I'd like to try to do, and we already do a good job of it, is just help cultivate even more the local talent that we have. I was part of a small group of people in KCCI that established Tallahassee Music Week, and we did that for 3 years running, which was incredible because it helped celebrate the local musical talent that we have across a 9-day period. We did that 3 years in a row. It was exhausting, and we did it for free because we loved it. But that's a kind of thing that Tallahassee's so good at. There's so much local talent here, musicians, visual artists, et cetera. We tap into that. We do a good job of it, and we all, as consumers, we attend these events and help prop them up. But we need to go further and help celebrate that because the likes of T-Pain and others, they're here right now. The next generation of those artists are here in Tallahassee now. We need to help cultivate them so that they can prosper and share their talent with the rest of the world.
Okay. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you. I absolutely love that we talk about focusing on cultivating, spotlighting, and making sure that we have programs and instruments for youth to engage in music. For myself, chorus and band did so much for me, and I think it's something that's going to help our community and our arts and everything. The other thing, I think, is to keep doing what we do to protect why people come here. Think of these venues, the Appalachia Regional Park for the cross country and the Scottish Festival, Cascades Park, all these areas, they all have a beautiful environment, canopy trees and nature. And so the fact that we continue to protect those and remember that when we're deciding what we do with our environment, remember that that's what makes us different and makes us special. That's one of the many things.
Okay,
Tom,
Commissioner Richardson.
one other thing I wanted to add is I was in a meeting with representatives from the arts community recently, and one of the issues that came up is that there is a sparsity of performance and venue space in Tallahassee and Leon County. So as a community, that might be something that we might want to address again. It's come up before, but we might want to address it again.
Okay. One other thing too, and this is for the audience as well, everyone has an opportunity to provide input to the Tallahassee Symphony Orchestra on who the next music director / conductor is going to be. During the 2024-2025 concert season, the 5 finalists for that position will be actually squiring the orchestra through a concert, and everyone's invited to give their input as to, boy, I think this person was great, maybe this one not so much, and then that kind of really falls on us to be a big part of that decision. And as you said, Commissioner Williams-Cox, when it comes to the kids, that's something I'm sure that our outgoing music director and conductor, Darko Budaras, was just awesome at. He could get kids so involved, it was unbelievable. So that's something for us to
Tom,
think about.
can I just add, I just want to congratulate our bicentennial committee, in conjunction with the city and the county. We have a calendar of all the events for this year, and I invite all the citizens to get a copy of the calendar or go online and print the calendar. And many of the performances, the groups that we've talked about here tonight are featured, and there will be various performances throughout this bicentennial year. So congratulations to them, but we want all of the citizens to participate in many of those activities.
Very good. From kind of happy stuff to something not quite so happy. Who has a good idea, besides Commissioner Minor, because you used to be the executive director of Second Harvest of the Big Bend, what do we do about food insecurity? Particularly in the lower income neighborhoods of our town. Commissioner Williams-Cox.
What the city of Tallahassee is already doing is identifying lots where we can have community gardens. And we're also training and teaching individuals on how to have those gardens and to actually turn it into an entrepreneurial opportunity if they choose to. We're also looking for opportunities to identify structures in those communities to be able to bring or lure grocers to come to those communities and come with a community mind, not come to charge $10 for a gallon of milk and whatever for eggs, but someone who's coming in to make sure that there are healthy choices in those neighborhoods, in those communities. So we're looking at those opportunities as well.
Okay. Commissioner O'Keefe.
Thank you. So first, we need to continue doing what we're doing and making sure that we continue funding food programs that we do have and expanding those. As far as new things, when we update our economic vitality strategic plan, I hope we consider including, recruiting, developing, and incentivizing those private grocers and fresh food companies to make it so that we not only make it easier and cost-effective and attractive to build or open stores where there are food deserts and create the jobs we want to provide in our economy. I think that's another one of these double wins where we both promote business and meet a community need in a designated and designed manner for our community benefit.
Okay. Mayor Daley.
Yeah, it's a great question, and to piggyback on what Commissioner Williams-Cox was saying, I think we need to get creative, thinking outside the box. For instance, I know at the City of Tallahassee, we provide free bus passes for all K-12 students to help with mobility and to be able to get out and about, and we need to sit down and think, how effective is this and how can we expand it to make it more impactful in our community? We've gotten very creative with our neighborhood programs. One of the first votes that we took when elected was creating the Neighborhood First program in Bond, and we have since expanded that to 2 other neighborhoods, really getting down on the street level and identifying where we can have a positive impact. But I also think it's time that we reassess our community. You know, there was the study that was done by a couple of professors many years ago that have identified some of our zip code challenges. But I think we need to go beyond zip code. I think we need to concentrate on census data. I think we need to drill down literally onto the street level. I think we need to engage our local universities to conduct that study. It's been a couple of years. Let's see where we are. Let's reevaluate where our challenges are and how we move forward from there.
Speaking of neighborhoods, here was a question that came in. If you remember when Southwood got underway, the grand plan was supposed to have a wide diversity of income levels and all manner of other mixes going into that development. It is still debatable whether or not that actually happened, but moving forward with other developments and neighborhoods in our community, how can city and county governments encourage more diversity of income, of race, of the entire warp and woof of who lives in these neighborhoods, and then provide resources such as enhanced public transportation to make sure that those areas are accessible to everyone regardless? Yes, Williams Cox.
Well, as we speak, such a project is existing right on Orange Avenue.
That's right.
Columbia Gardens at South City.
That's right.
And we're building a transit station right down the street from it, so that folks don't have to come downtown to CK Steel to get around town. They'll be able to come straight from their neighborhood. And many others, as we've mentioned, TLC and Habitat for Humanity are also those entities. And we also need to keep in mind that just because a neighborhood looks like it's a neighborhood that doesn't welcome equity, diversity and equity, perhaps they do, because we have individuals who live in places who have vouchers from Tallahassee Housing Authority. We don't know who has a voucher because it's not our business, and they may be living in Killearn or living in Southwood or wherever. We can't make those assumptions without knowing something about the situation. So we might be more diverse than we realize, but I think that there's always room for more.
Okay. Curtis Richardson.
Thank you, Tom. One of the policies that the city has had long-standing is our inclusionary housing policy, which means that if you are going to develop more than, correct me if I'm wrong, 25 units, then a percentage of that has to be affordable, quote, affordable, however you define affordable. But they can also buy their way out of that, and that's what happened in Southwood. Southwood chose, rather than to build those inclusionary units, to buy their way out of that policy. I can tell you the Gosvinis have done a great job of voluntarily doing that, and they have set the example for others. And so that's one of the ways I think we can certainly incentivize the developers for doing that kind of inclusionary housing in their developments.
Okay. Lightning round time at the behest of our friends at the Village Square. And here is a very, very simple question. I want you to pick out one person on this panel, maybe a person that you don't have a lot of association with. You may not even know them that well. Maybe you don't even like them, but that's okay. Say something nice about them.
Oh, yeah.
Carolyn Cummings.
Okay.
Pick someone.
You know, I've had the pleasure for the last, March, 3 months of chronicling the 200th anniversary of the city of Tallahassee and Leon County. And I have certainly enjoyed our mayor. I mean, we have the greatest mayor because he really promotes the city of Tallahassee, and he does it in such an impactful manner, and I have come to really admire him over the last couple of months because of that. Didn't know him very well, but I've come to know him more now.
Okay.
And I think Tallahassee should be very proud that he is our mayor.
Very good. Mayor Daley.
Yeah, this is a softball for two of us. This is an amazing year to serve as the chair and the mayor during the bicentennial, and I think it's ramped up our calendar quite a bit as well. We have a lot of events that we do together, starting again at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Okay. And I have had the chance to get to know Carolyn on a personal level, and she's absolutely an amazing individual, a great stateswoman, a great leader, and quite frankly, we are having fun, and that's a good time.
Yeah.
It's called reciprocity. It's a good thing. Commissioner Minor.
Thanks, Tom. I would have to say I want to thank Commissioner Diane Williams-Cox. We've actually, we worked together in a different capacity like 15 years ago within party politics, but we've never really had a chance to sit down with each other since that time. And I want to thank her for her leadership on passenger rail. We can't work together because of the Sunshine Law, because we very well could vote on it in Blueprint. But yet I want to thank her for her advocacy on that, because she's working one angle, I'm working another angle, and we've got a lot of hoops to jump through before we can bring passenger rail to Tallahassee. There's a lot of things we've got to accomplish, funding being the big one, right? But the fact that we've got a large community here that really wants to bring passenger rail back to Tallahassee, and the fact that Diane Williams-Cox and myself are working with all of you to kind of push and let people know how badly we want it, is something I'm very grateful to her for.
Very good. Commissioner O'Keefe.
I just am so impressed by Commissioner Welch's choice in hairstyle.
I got you win. That's it.
You won the internet.
Welch's choice of hairstyle.
That's right. Make a wish.
David, that was good.
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Okay, Commissioner Porter.
I don't know.
How do you top that, right?
You can just say my hairstyle too if you want.
But yeah, I also think he looks so handsome.
Oh.
His hairstyle. But, Commissioner Richardson and I have fun. We have our little banter, and I respect him as the dean, and, the perspective that he brings and the history, and, even talking about Southwood. So I always enjoy what I can learn from him.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner.
Okay, Commissioner Richardson.
Mine is Commissioner Welch. He and I are both totally committed to our families. We share pictures and events on Facebook, and he'll like mine when I post about my daughters, and I will like his when he posts about his daughters and his son, and we just share that in common, being totally dedicated to our families.
Okay, Commissioner.
And my wife, of course.
Oh, yeah.
Who is with us this evening. I got to go home, y'all.
Thank you, Tom. No brainer for me as well. I got me and Commissioner Richardson got kind of a man crush going on here. Commissioner Richardson, in the 3 years that I've gotten to know him, is really a role model for me in terms of what a great father looks like. His great daughters. I take no higher responsibility than being a great husband and great father. And I know the judge over here, she brags on this guy, and I tell you what, he is. And I also, as a policymaker and a colleague, I never have to question Commissioner Richardson's motives. I know that his heart is in the right place. He wants to do what's best for this community. He's trying his hardest. He's a legend around here. He's done public service for a long time, and I certainly aspire to be like him.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Very good. And we'll wind her up here at the Commissioner Williams-Cox.
Well, let me just say that there's no one up here that I do not like. I don't agree with them all, but I like working with every last one of them. But one of the individuals here that I've had through the years had to overcome a challenge because we found ourselves on opposite sides of something one time, and we were both running for office at the same time and ended up in the same place, sitting next to one another, and I had to pretend that I couldn't stand him. But what we did during that cycle is that we decided to bury the hatchet and let's work together. We both won our elections, and we have worked together ever since. Mayor John Daley, it's been a pleasure working with you.
You at WC.
And on that convivial note, I think we're going to bring the proceedings to a halt here at the Village Square's Our Town Forum. Again, to the folks who came here in person and were part of our audience, and the folks who took part online and really made some fantastic suggestions as far as the questions are concerned. We thank you so much, and we can't wait to get back together again next time for the Our Town Forum, featuring members of the Tallahassee City Commission and the Leon County Board of County Commissioners here at the WFSU Public Media Studios. I'm Tom Flanigan. Thank you all for coming, and have a wonderful evening.